Welcome back to the Arkopia show. Today I'm going to tell you why it doesn't matter who you are, what resources you are, how long you've been doing this, that you will never be prepared. So this is something I've been thinking about quite a bit lately. The inputs in different systems that you put together. There's always outside inputs. Now, you can do your best to produce as much as you can yourself and do as much as you can yourself and create simple systems. But regardless of anything that you set up, it's still going to require outside inputs. So I don't know, there's a million different things I can talk about. So let's start with solar panels. Okay, so let's go off grid and get a solar panel system and spend a ridiculous amount of money and get our solar array, our solar racking, our super expensive inverters and grid tie and panels and batteries. And, what do all these things last? How long do they last for? Solar panel, they say 25 years and then they still will probably work, but at a decreased rate. Somebody had to manufacture those solar panels. You're obviously not making your own solar panels. The big expensive wire to get from the solar panels to your inverter. The batteries had to be mined and processed and shipped. Those batteries, if you set them up perfectly and everything, they're only going to last, who knows, 10 years. Let's say you get really, really expensive lithium iron phosphate batteries, 10 years. Let's talk about my greenhouse that, everybody's very interested in. So I like building things passively. So the most important part of any building is insulation, vapor barrier, the envelope that nobody in society cares about, right? Everybody cares about granite countertops. They never ask how much insulation's in the attic. A long-term roof. So I built it. The roof I don't have to replace for a long, long time, but I will have to replace it at some point. Everything I build, I try to build for longevity, but eventually you're going to have to build some more. So where am I going to get metal screws, the washers for the metal screws, the tin for the roof when I have to redo it or my kids have to redo it in 80 years or whatever. But I try to do things passively. So on the greenhouse, hopefully I'll get, 20, 25 years out of the polycarbonate on the outside of the greenhouse. So that's not very long, right? 25 years. Like, I'm a young man. I know how old I will be in 25 years. And that will have to be replaced. And guess where that comes from? Like everything else, from China. And the poly on the inside membrane is probably 5 years, 8 years tops, maybe, because it's kind of on the inside, doesn't get the full sun, it isn't flapping in the wind, but, let's say 8 years, you have to replace it. All the little, bug problems and things in an enclosed system. So every time you close up a greenhouse when it gets really cold outside and you go from open ecosystem, part of nature, to boom, you're completely closed in, and then you have bug issues. Well, where are you going to get ladybugs? Are you going to produce your own ladybugs, nematodes, beneficial wasps as well? But dish soap and vegetable oil to make homemade insecticidal soap. Those are things I also purchased. What about, I'm going to be putting up some solar evacuated tubes for some water heating. Now, those things will last, I think they have a 10-year warranty, 25 years if you do it properly. But I'm looking into that, and if I install them, what's going through my head is, in the summertime, you need extensive dump lines, and to dissipate the heat, or you have to shield those things, or else they'll get so hot they explode. So, if I was doing the greenhouse again, I might have spent the money on sand that isn't local to me, or maybe just clay, and put in thousands and thousands and thousands of feet of PEX line way under the greenhouse as my dump line for in the summertime. So you can kind of charge the ground like that climate battery, but they use air tubes. But it's a way to get rid of that heat. But anyways, these solar evacuated tubes, you spend all this money and time and you set them up, and maybe you get 10 years, maybe you get 20 years out of them. What about all the fittings? I've had fittings, like brass fittings of plumbing, fail. And, in my shop, plumbing, like the fitting just splits. It was manufacturer defect. And if you're not in the shop, you come out and the whole shop is like spraying water everywhere. And then luckily I have contingencies. I have different drain systems, so my building will never flood, never blow over from the wind, how I built it. There's no fire risk, like everything's metal. So you do these contingencies, but all this plumbing and these fittings, and are you going to stock all these fittings? If I do that water heating and you have a pump, or if you need ventilation, I have fans in the greenhouse. And those fans, conk out. So what am I going to do? Store a bunch of fans? How long am I preparing for? There's all sorts of input costs, ongoing costs, and things that you cannot do yourself. You cannot do everything yourself. So, you do what you can, but it's, like even your stovepipe chimney in your house you get stovepipe to be a chimney sweep, to sweep it out, all the creosote out. But those stovepipes don't last forever. Your wood stove isn't going to last forever. Some things last longer than other things, but, some things don't. There's all these input costs. And what I try to do is just maximize my responsibility and my self-reliance, maximize it, and with minimal input costs. So I talk about creating a closed homestead system. So I have X amount of land that can hold X amount of goats and create this X amount of hay for those goats in the winter. So my land can sustainably have X amount of animals and livestock. And my plan is to maximize that, so I don't have a lot of inputs. But am I going to refine my own diesel from oil that I pumped out of the ground myself to make the little bit of diesel that I need for baling hay? No, I need some diesel inputs. And if everybody thinks Tesla cars and electricity is the answer, well, no, those batteries are going to go bad. I guess if I got a brand new or a used electric golf cart with brand new, really good batteries, it's kind of like I have zero maintenance for 7 years, and then after 7 years, I got to replace the batteries in this golf cart. So it's wonderful and everything for 7 years, and then what do you do? I guess a lot of the preparedness community, when they start, and if you're a new preparedness, you're probably, you start with a short time frame and then work your way out. And then for me, I've had this mentality and been doing this a long time. So of course I started with storing a bunch of food. That's like number one. And then you get some security aspect. And then if you're in the city and you don't have a water source, then water is important for you. And maybe people will have 72 hours, like the government of Canada says on their preparedness day. I forget when that is. Have 72 hours, and here's what you need: some candles, a blanket, and stuff. And then you can work out from there, right? Maybe you have a week's worth of food. Maybe you have a month's worth of food. But when you create this long game that something is seriously wrong in the world, and I don't foresee very many good macro things happening, you try to do these big preparedness, long-term self-reliance, lifestyle things. And just what I'm learning is there's still inputs. Like I can do everything the best. You could build a greenhouse attached to a house made out of concrete and super passive, but you're still going to need, nematodes for your soil when you have a aphid problem or something. You're still going to need your any water pump or any fan is eventually going to conk out, and you need another motor, right? You still have to replace the poly and polycarbonate. You still have to replace the roofing. So it's kind of like you have to participate in the economy and society, and trade and barter and having a community is nice. Like, but it's funny. It's a funny thing in Canada. So it's it's like so if I get solar evacuated tubes, okay, where do those come from? Well, of course, China, the world's factory. And does anybody stock anything? No. If I need parts, can I get anything? No. If I'm out of, Mylar bags for the stuff that we freeze dry for ourselves, is there any local or much for inventory? No. How about you? If you like canning on a wood stove, that's great. That's as low tech and foolproof as you can get. So you're going to break mason jars, and then maybe you need to replace them. But mason jars, you need to use a new snap lid every time. So I, of course, stored a lot of snap lids because, I see value in having that, and we use them. But eventually I'm going to run out. One thing I stocked up on recently is 1 and 2 pound ground meat bags and the tape dispenser to put that together. So when I'm doing any sort of butchering, I put it in the nice little bags with a seal on it, and then Sharpie marker, and then, that's how I do ground meat. But eventually I'm going to run out of bags and tape and seals, and the dispenser's going to break, and I won't have a Sharpie marker to even label it. So, if it goes into, and I try to pull my brain back from this, if it goes into like long term, the rest of my days and my kids' days is no international trade, so nobody has any products, and hyperinflation and just terrible in a harsh place like Canada, where we don't have a lot of factories and things made locally, or self-reliance type of thing. What about, everybody where I'm from? We got agriculture. So we do grains and commodity, large scale agriculture stuff. So that's great. And because of that, people can do feedlots and animals and things. And we do have land, so we can get hay. So we can have meat and eggs and dairy and commodity crops and everything. But what are all the input costs for that big farming stuff? Farming today, nobody has little equipment. It's literally been so long since people had little equipment that it's even hard to get parts for the old, smaller equipment, like an old baler or an old tractor. It's like now it's just big ag, right? $500,000, $1 million combines and pieces of equipment. And things like some of the manufacturers, you can't replace parts or do anything yourself, and they have patents on things. And the chips for those, guess what? All the parts, are they made here? No. If something is made here, it's probably, what they're saying is it's assembled here, like vehicles, like all the parts come in and then they're assembled. Or if it's really good and we get the raw commodity and somebody manufactures it and somebody puts all the pieces together, it doesn't matter. You're still going to need these little things from other inputs. Like, you can't be a complete closed-in system. There's a few things you can do. So it's to be as self-reliant and self-sufficient as possible, not go too big with anything, do high efficient buildings. Passive is always the best, because passive is no moving parts. Active is you need a pump and a fan and water fittings and air moving, and and things like that. So just passive, situated with the sun, the proper design, so you're not going to freeze to death. And small buildings. So I think I have 2 wood cook stoves. They're old, antique, big ones. I think I'm going to get for my little house a wood cook stove that has both. And geez, these things are expensive, and you can't find any used because nobody has it, because nobody values them. The people that would buy something expensive like that, like they know the value of it, like me, so I'd never sell it used. Like thousands of dollars for this thing, but a fire in it, so it does provide heat to lower BTUs, and you can regulate the heat to the oven and the stovetop and a bread warmer all in one high efficient thing. Now that is pretty foolproof. Like, I just need to go collect sticks, and then I can burn sticks, and then we can literally bake in an oven and have a stovetop. So that's as foolproof as you can get. But the things like my well, I put a hand pump on the well, and eventually the seals go in those, and something screws up in that. And guess what? You need an input to get the hand water pump going. So maybe a rope, which also goes bad. And I don't make my own rope, so it's nice to store some rope. A rope in a pail, and then you can get water out of the well and then carry it to the house if things get bad. And for those that have, solar panels and backup systems and stuff, that what that means is you're good for X amount of months or years, and then, or until any one of those things stops working. And then you have to find a rope and pail to go get the water. So, small house, low tech is the ultimate. So wood cook stove, chimney goes up and straight out the roof, and that's that. You can boil water on it, you can cook on it. Insulation in your walls, protected by a good long-term siding and good vapor barrier on the inside. That's there for as long as that building stands, so a long time. That's a good option. So insulation in your walls, good quality windows, or the double windows that I do in some of my buildings, or double doors, 2 sets of doors in them, and just high efficient, designed properly. The sun comes in, you have a wood stove in there for heating, another wood cook stove for in the summertime out on your porch for summer cooking, because you don't want to have a fire in your house in the heat of the summer. That would be terrible. But it doesn't matter. There's input costs for everything. So another example is when you go into business or farming, or big farming in general. So I don't plan on getting super big or nothing. Again, I want to do kind of a homestead on steroids, full use of the land in a sustainable manner, not high intensive livestock operations or anything, but I get the hay off of here, and there's enough feed on the pasture where they're not eating it down to nothing, and everything's healthier, and you're not going to get rich off of it. But if you expand from that, I have 3 cows for our milk, and I provide some milk to just a handful of customers. But, well, this is good. I see money in it. Let's go to 10 cows or 30 or 500. Then all of a sudden it's a different system. So it's not worth pasturing the animals. It's probably worth getting the big equipment and turning it into silage. And instead of square bales, you go to round bales. And instead of any sort of passive solar design, it's not worth it. And then it gets to big business. And is it worth putting R80 insulation in the roof, or just R20 is good enough for this system? And as long as I have that amount of livestock in the barn at all times, the livestock gives enough heat to warm the building properly. So it's this big system you created. So an example of this is the Hutterites. So the Hutterites literally make so much money because they produce so much that, I don't know, I can't speak for every colony. Every colony is different, but some colonies, they have to spend I don't know, $2 million or $5 million a year on a building or a land purchase or equipment purchases or expanding with their business because they just are flushed with money. So they got big into business and then they keep getting bigger and growing. So they don't even build their own buildings anymore for the most part. They sub it out, right? Back in the day, Hutterites aren't like Amish that stayed low tech. Nope, no electricity, no phones, no vehicles, no gas, no inputs. We're just going to live very primitively. Hutterites are similar to the Amish, except they have now the most technologically advanced everything. So all their buildings are subbed out. They're built with concrete and things. No passive solar design. It's like the buildings are too big. They run it north to south instead of east to west and have a greenhouse on the side, because who wants to bother with that, right? You just pay for lights on the inside, and it ends up financially and business-wise working out as long as all of the inputs that they need for everything are still there with no problems. So natural gas, diesel, parts, equipment, the cages for the chicken layers, all the water fittings and drinking nipples and feed additives and everything, right? It's just incredible amount of inputs. But as a business, it's you take 10 inputs and put them together, and then you make a product that's valued at slightly more, and then everybody kind of wins in this system. But I can tell you, on a Hutterite colony, there is no such thing. There is literally not a wood stove on there. Everything's natural gas. There is no wood stove. All their houses are not super high efficient or designed like passive solar design, right? So if the natural gas just cuts out, like, the colony is toast. So if you lose an input, you're toast. If they lose diesel, there's no farming. If they lose feed additive, they lose all their chickens, and just endless. So there, you can see it. It's just like the macro civilizations, that they're going to be a product of their success is their demise, right? It's just a stage in there. And another thing, a lot laziness became of that, and decadence. I can see it in the colonies as well, like the Hutterite colony. So everybody's not particularly physically fit and of a good body weight. A lot of health problems and diabetes in there and things. It's just crazy. And when I learn something, and then I can observe it at different angles and things, and I don't know how to create, or how humans create sustainable systems. It seems like the human species, you either grow or you collapse with no in between in all sorts of different systems. So the macro system, entire countries, entire cities, entire communities, they need more, and you need to make more and things, or else you collapse. I try to fight that, or make a system that's my intention anyways, is kind of maximizing everything so everything gets better, nature gets better, I can still make an income off of it, I can still produce food off of it and things, and then minimal inputs. But when I do need inputs, hopefully they're still available to get them. Lots of stuff to unpack and think about for, nobody is prepared. So if, I think about this, what would be the ultimate building and the ultimate setup for long term and things? And there's no such thing. It doesn't exist, right? So the billionaires that will dig a bunker and store it with food, eventually that food's going to run out. Or there's a problem with the ventilation system in the bunker, and they only have one replacement fan, and that one's a dud too. And then there's no ventilation in their $1 billion bunker. Like a billionaire isn't protected either. So what is the answer really? So the answer is kind of, I don't have the answers either. I just kind of trying to get to the bottom of certain things. But the answer is live within your means, when you build something, build it to last. The lower tech that it is, the better. If you have something high tech, consider it a luxury that you can do without. Another important thing is traditional family structures. So lots of people in the West don't have kids anymore, so they're going to be very lonely in their old age and have no help in their own old age. And it's, old age is going to be bad. But if you have children and you educate and raise those children, then when the parents get older, those children kind of take over the main stuff and you pass the torch to them, and then they make it maybe a little bit better or something, and then they have kids, and then the grandkids, and then the grandparents look after the grandkids. So you have a closed family system where everyone benefits, the grandparents, the parents, and the children. So that is gone in the West. That's why we have old folks' homes here. So that is one thing you can do for resilience and self-sufficiency and less inputs, is right down to the closed family system level. So live close to your nuclear family, like or multi-generational family. Work together, build things, share in the chores together. So another thing is me being a Hutterite colony of one, and with 3 very small boys that are at the age where they're heavily dependent, just maybe getting out of that. It's been a struggle to get anything done. So I'm trying to build things, and then after I build things, I have to maintain things and do things for the thing that I built. And I have all these other chores, and so it's a heavy burden on me, because I'm a Westerner that was a victim of the Western system that is collapsing and not working. But when my boys can help, I'm okay, we got this chore, chicken chore, water chore for the goats and the pigs, and today we're going to butcher a goat or a cow or a rabbit, and we're like, dad built the building. It's well insulated. It's not freezing. The stainless steel equipment, the knives, I have everything, and it's all set up, and you kind of fine tune a small assembly line, not big, but small. And we're all going to, it doesn't take too long if you have some help, butcher and make ground meat, whether that's no electricity and you have the hand grinder, or you have the big electric one. If you have bags, put them in bags. If you have a freezer, you put it in freezers. If you have a smoker, you do it, it's a certain size smoker where you can do enough, making biltong is a South African, it's kind of like jerky, but without smoking. You just hang raw meat with a bunch of spices on that. You need a cabinet for that with a small fan on it, or a smoker. And again, the smoker I'm planning on building is an electric heat source. It's a insulated stainless cabinet, and it also is an electric smoke generator. So you can regulate the amount of smoke and the amount of heat perfectly to get a perfect large batch, right? Whereas maybe it's worth doing a little shed smokehouse with a wood burning one outside as well, really old school, right? And hopefully I stored enough salt, because that's what you use to, preserve meat long term. But anyways, with the kids and things and family, you do need help. And then when you do a project like, it's when the Hutterites do their chicken butchering day, it's the entire colony in an assembly line in the butcher building for the entire morning, and thousands upon thousands of chickens are done in a day. And if it was just one guy or a small family, you can't do a big assembly line like that. Like, they have a kind of a system with the amount of help that they have. And low tech is always best. I kind of talked about that. Low tech has minimal or no moving parts. It takes elbow grease to do it, but hopefully there's always elbow grease to be had. Hopefully you get enough calories and energy that way that somebody has elbow grease to crank a meat grinder or split firewood and haul it in, right? Somebody has to be able-bodied to be able to do that, but it's good exercise, right? It's as opposed to natural gas furnace and watching Netflix. Like, that's, everybody's fat now. Yeah, it's nice to enjoy the luxuries while they're available. Like, for instance, for me right now, it's, my buildings are very high efficient, and natural gas, like everything I have is new and I built and high efficient. So for all of the stuff that I'm setting up on the farm to be able to produce things, the amount of natural gas I use is like nothing, right? It actually costs more doing it. If I don't include any labor myself or my time in it, it costs more to do heat with wood. Okay, so gas in the chainsaw thing is dull, need to do that. Oh, chainsaw wore out, I gotta buy another one. Gotta fire up the truck and haul the firewood, gotta fire up the log splitter, got to move crates of wood around, and it takes up, on top of it costing more than natural gas, it takes up more of my time, and it's dirtier, right? It's messy to heat with wood. So right now, I'm definitely enjoying my minuscule natural gas bill per month and no wood stove. So temperatures in the buildings are just perfect. I don't have to do anything, but in what I'm doing is, instead of hauling firewood, I'm utilizing my time to do something else that provides more value while still processing firewood and storing firewood and not losing myself in the easiness of the natural gas that's cheap and comes into the buildings, right? You don't lose yourself in these luxuries. You still do. To find a wood cook stove, they're super expensive, and there's not very many people selling them. Like, there's not a store that stocks them because so few people buy them. And there's a reason for that. Everybody's used to natural gas fireplace, right? Or electric fireplace or a gel fireplace. Nobody has wood, a wood cook stove, or you're used to your natural gas or electric stovetop and microwave, right? But me, like, we use an electric stove and a microwave. We have those conveniences and luxuries in our own home, right? But I'm not losing sight. I put a wood heating stove that you can cook on in my house, but I think it's a good investment as a preparation to have the cook stove with the oven and things. So if everything goes to, if the inputs stop, the natural gas, the electricity, if I had solar panels and then the electricity goes out and, the batteries, there's a problem with an inverter and the whole system shut down and you have no electricity, you still have a wood cook stove, so you can boil water, sanitize water, make tea, bake bread, do all that stuff. So, and I'm putting that high on my priority list of things to do. So you can do a big business, you can enjoy the luxuries, you can, take advantage of the things that are available now, but do not lose sight of the low-tech stuff and the things that you probably inherently know you should be doing, right? I should store some firewood. I should have a wood stove in my house. Things like that. I should have pails and some rope stored so I can at least haul water or melt snow to have water for family and animals and things. Freeze drying's cool and everything, but, a freeze dryer, it has those home freeze dryers. It has a cooling unit, a vacuum pump that has a lot of maintenance, heating plates, digital computer thing with chips in it and things that, and all of those systems in the home freeze dryer have issues. And then you need the specialized packaging and oxygen absorbers. So I love home freeze drying, but wood cook stove, canning jars, lids stored up, that is foolproof, right? Or as close to foolproof as you can get for doing, some preserves yourself. So freeze drying is great. Take advantage of, if you're not home freeze drying or not going to invest in a harvest rate or something, you can take advantage of things to store now, like freeze dried food, buckets of rice, buckets of wheat, while the price is, I know everything's super expensive and going up with food products. I know, because that's the industry I'm in, but it's still cheap, I'm telling you. So hopefully that's just some real talk that somebody needed to hear. I don't want that to depress you or suppress you from moving forward with things that you're doing, or, what's the point, right? You still wake up and you do things every day. Don't just, there's no point because nobody's going to be prepared. Or if I do this, then there's input costs. You still try and you try to do things, but really think about what you're doing and how you set up. So, luxuries are nice if you can afford it, but maybe it's wood cook stove is a good investment, or some chimney pipe. It's, you kind of have to live these two lives. But let me know what you think, if that made sense, if you're on the same page, if you've had the same experiences that I have had, being a long-term, self-reliant, personally responsible, they call us preppers. Let's leave it at that. We will talk to you guys next time. Thanks for listening.